Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Massive drama continuing last night on the state of the Call of Duty League. Hex confirming the OpTic Major this season will not have a Challengers component. Not because OpTic don't necessarily want to do it, but because it's a lot of expense. And the CDL has seemingly no interest in subsidizing that event alongside the main Call of Duty League tournament. What does this mean for the state of the league? How things are going forwards? Does it mean that many of these top Challenger players are simply going to retire because there are no events this season and Path to Pro simply does not exist anymore? We are 5-6 years into the CDL, and in this regard, it's maybe the worst that it's ever been. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. As always, plenty to get into today. Shotzzy, after all the drama with the streaming practice earlier in the day, as we talked about, he was then like, okay, what time do the elite games start? Let me tune in for those. Now, I think from the Challenger side, if there are going to be fewer LANs, we've got to have more elites. We've got to have more cups. You know, we've got to have these other things going on. Because also, even a player like aBeZy, he's got the connections with the pro players. He's got the pedigree. He's got the world championship ring. But if people can't even watch the guy play, certainly on LAN, how are teams going to pick him up? And that's a guy like aBeZy, let alone a new name maybe coming through and making some waves. So, Shotzzy says, what time do the elite games start? aBeZy comes through. Obviously, Shotzzy gives him good luck for the tournament as well. Thought this is pretty cool to see as well. So, the Vegas Falcons Academy, they took down both Exceed's team and Mock's team. So, of course, that's King of Body, QK, King, and Hamza Frosty. So, very impressive result, I thought, to start off with. As Clay says, the Academy boys showed up 6-1 map count to start the Elite. This, I thought, was particularly impressive just because the SGP team, we see them scrim FaZe quite a lot. And in the FaZe scrims, they're splitting maps, if not beating FaZe. And yet, Vegas Falcons Academy come through and they slap them around 3-0. So maybe it's time we get King of Body straight back into the Pro League. But just before we get on to some of the drama on the Tier 2 stuff, just wanted to share this clip from Scump, really, because I think what Scump says here doesn't necessarily just apply to Call of Duty as a whole, but also probably to the league as well in some regards, right? The reality is, the Call of Duty League was meant to be a very different product than it's turned out to be. When it was founded in 2019 going into 2020, the intention was world tour, massive money, the pros are flying around to different cities every weekend playing tournaments, and terrible idea, and it would never have lasted. But when the pandemic happened, they had to shift the CDL substantially, and the CDL we see today is effectively the CDL that re-emerged after the pandemic, but they've not built what they were looking to build initially. So we're kind of still stuck here with this league that is kind of in limbo, and in many regards is not as good as it previously was. And the reality is as well, this Call of Duty game, Black Ops 6, it's not my favourite one, but fundamentally, it's not bad. It's a pretty decent game. There are just so many issues with the hackers and the ranked play and just the maps from that perspective as well, and the interest from the developers and Activision to actually make it work, that, as Scump says, Call of Duty might be in the worst spot that it's ever been in on some level. And I think, to some degree at least, that is translating down to the Call of Duty League as well.
Call of Duty's just in such a bad spot right now, dude. I don't think Call of Duty has ever been in a worse spot than it is right now. It's kind of depressing, to be honest. I was already concerned, like, them releasing rank so early, and the CDL started up, and then we had, like, a month break from the CDL. So I was already a little bit concerned about all of that, because I was like, okay, I don't know, they're kind of busting all their load all over the place a little bit early. You know, rank play, they usually make us wait, and they blue ball us a little bit. They make us wait for, they make us chase that carrot for like 2 months into the game's release. They dropped it so early, and then they dropped it, and it was so bad because of all the hackers. Rank play itself isn't bad, okay? Rank play itself is fine. I think the system is fine. I think it could be better, but I think it's fine. I don't think there's any problems with it. The problem is the cheaters. I don't know. They just fucked up. And again, we're not completely straying away from COD either. Like, let's not overreact. I'm not gonna be not playing COD at all. We're just gonna be switching things up a little bit more. I'm gonna be a little bit more free with what I want to do on stream. Again, Shotzzy said they're gonna be streaming scrims a lot, so we'll probably be tuning into those Probably not every day, but quite a bit.
So last night we started to get some drama on what was happening elsewhere in the state of the league. Every year for the last couple of years, the support for challenges has been reduced significantly. I remember the days of Black Ops 4 season, CWL Miami. Miami was the finale for the Pro League, so they had the top 8 teams there and it was the Pro League playoffs. They also had the challenges finale there as well, just before the actual Call of Duty World Championship. They had, you know, the challenger teams up on the main stage playing the championships there, and we've seen it a bit in the CDL recently as well, but many of these CDL tournaments, they're not run by the league, they're not run at the venues they used to be at, and especially when it's a brand new venue, as we're seeing this year in Madrid and other factors like that, actually making it work for challenges is a bit of a nightmare. Boston made it work in the 2023 year, but they had the players up in like, you know, the executive suites at Fenway Park, and it was like 0 degrees and freezing. Doug was playing with his gloves on and his coat, and it's like, look, that wasn't ideal, but that was the kind of thing that needed to be done to actually make it work, because you go to these venues, the CDL don't really get involved, and, you know, the CDL aren't necessarily even going to subsidize putting on the challenges stuff. So that's pretty much where we are today, and as Austin says, easy Mac, looking for 2 challenges lands, maybe 3. If they can't do lands, we need more elites minimum, and this is the clip that started to emerge yesterday with Hex coming out on Zoomer's stream saying that the OpTic event, so it's going to be Major 2 this year in Dallas in March, is not going to have a Challengers tournament attached. And that is because it's an awful lot of expense to run Challenger tournaments. I actually think one of the big reasons for this is the move to PC. I think for Challengers, there's a couple of things I would do if I was in charge relatively quickly. I would lower the age entry limit for challenges down to 16. If I could make it 15, maybe I would, but certainly 16. Any younger, I think it's probably too much. But 16, I think at the bare minimum, people should be allowed to play challenges, in my opinion. I'm almost certain that it would be doable, just because the 18 plus number it's not like a legal limit, it's a guideline. So I'm pretty, even if it takes parental permission, whatever, I'm sure that it would be possible, because it happens in other esports. So, you know, I don't know, that's another point that I've made before. And I would also, if possible, now that Microsoft own the thing, move challenges back to Xbox, because you see this problem when you go to the LAN tournaments, that the Challengers tournament to run in terms of expense is arguably more than the Pro tournaments, because you've got so many PCs, you've got all these setups going on, you've got potentially all sorts of tech delays. If you've got a Challengers open bracket, like, it's honestly incredible that the guys that run the show over there can actually make it work on time. And the expense, though, for all the PCs, all the monitors, all the equipment that you need is mega. Back in the day, I mean, look, it wasn't cheap, but you'd bring along a ton of PS4s and just plug them into one another and off you go. Whereas PCs, it's far more complicated from like a sound point of view and all that type of stuff. So I think that's affected things as well. I also think it's raised the barriers to entry, and the teams who run the events are already incurring serious costs to do so. They may break even, they may not on the events that they run, because hiring a venue for 3 to 4 days over a weekend is very, very expensive to do, and you've got the staffing cost and potential overtime costs for the long days in Call of Duty as well. Like, you know, it ain't cheap to do this thing, and the CDL is seemingly not at all interested to subsidize the cost. Hex said, look, if they were to give us the money to run the Challengers tournament or help us with some of the budget, then sure, we'd do it. But if they're not, we simply can't. That's not how it's going to be. And the immediate reaction, of course, was understandable. Here's ProLoot, player who's been around quite some time, and he says, oh, you know, I can't believe this, because especially for the Dallas one, of all the events you'd expect there potentially to be a Dallas one. But he says, oh, like, you know, nah, what's going to happen next? And obviously, Temp is saying to him, you know, maybe it's time to come to university, right? And ProLoot says, if I don't go pro next semester, I'm in. So, yeah, we'll see how that one goes. But this is just some of the immediate reaction and the discussion about it in the league, because as Drill says, no CDL Challengers events at Major 1 and now the Texas event 2. Major 4 is to be determined. We don't even know where it's going to be in the first place, let alone if there's going to be one. So so what? Maybe one event and champs have challenges, brutal, kick in the teeth for all challengers, and understandably so. And this, I'm very glad that people started talking about this, because I've always found this entertaining, especially over the last few years. As even Kel says, there's no Challengers events to start the year. Start your path to pro, is what the website says. Call of Duty Challenges is the official path to pro circuit for amateur Call of Duty esports players around the globe. A thriving competitive scene in Call of Duty esports is important to the future of the league and spotlights rising talent in the player pipeline. So, you know, what happened to that, right? Is there a path to pro anymore? Do they care? Like, you know, it doesn't seem like it. Now, to be fair, I'm not sure even how much of this is necessarily on the league and how much of this is on the people that make the decisions above the league. The reality is it should probably be one and the same, but it is so frustrating to think about that. I'm sure there are people that work for the league that would like to put money into this. They do not have the budget from Activision to make it work. That's my feeling, but you know, I may be wrong. But regardless, it's such a shambles, right? And this was what was initially said. The second level of the logo represents the league's amateur system, where aspiring players who seek to go pro can compete for dedicated prize pools. The amateur system will resemble the professional system's gameplay and will feature both online and LAN open brackets throughout the year. That's what they said. This is what the logo looks like, and it was, you know, the three pillars of the Call of Duty League: the pros, the challenges, and the community, or the fans, or whatever they said. But you know, arguably 2.5 of those are disappearing before our very eyes. And as Driel says, this I thought was pretty funny, because you guys may remember when the CDL first came around, the Minnesota Open event way back at the start of MW19, the winners of the challenges bracket, their prize was like to meet and greet Scump. I think it was like genuinely something like that was the prize for the challenges winners. And it's like, hang on a second, I don't think you understand, Mr. Call of Duty League, man, exactly what's going on here and why the path to pro exists and the discussion between the pros and the amateurs and all this stuff, the distinction there, I guess. And obviously Drill's making a joke about that. But as he says, I mean, you know, maybe he's going to run an event. I'll run the damn event. I've got 2 stations in my apartment. I'll put $1,000 up. Just don't tell the CDL. Secret password at the door is path to pro, which of course doesn't exist. And as he says here, look at this setup. This would be the perfect way to run Omit versus Falcons Academy or something. Station 2 in my kitchen. It's like, yeah, so sad to think about what could be. This is, though, when the discussion will continue to return to the Falcons, Saudi Arabia, the Esports World Cup. It's going to be a talking point in all of esports. I mean, it already has been in sports for several years now, and in esports it's definitely becoming a thing, because as Luti says, Riyadh sounds like a good place for a Challengers LAN. And it may well be, and may well prove to be, that for the Challengers tournament and the future of the league, it's going to rely an awful lot on money from Saudi Arabia. If the league isn't going to put it up, then the Saudis potentially will. They may not, depends on their perspective and, you know, where else they've got money invested, certainly in the esports world. But look, Luti, Falcons coach, basically says, yeah, maybe we can find a way to make this work. So that's kind of where we are today. It's an absolute nightmare. I know that Benjay was getting roasted a bit for this, because you guys might remember last year when it was talked about that Miami, Carolina were not running a Challengers event. He tweeted this out: unacceptable from the combo of Miami, Carolina in the CDL. Don't run an event if you can't afford to run a Challengers tournament. This scene doesn't exist without community participation. Now, I don't necessarily disagree, but you know, I think what Ben was trying to say, that he was saying at the time, was that, well, you know, the whole comment on can't afford it, that also includes the league. But yeah, there was a bit of drama about Ben's reaction there, kind of, you know, maybe not criticizing OpTic in the way that he did those other teams. That was at least the general theory. But I don't blame OpTic for this, right? I mean, let's be real. It's like the fact that they're even running an event is more than many teams do. And then you're expecting them to come out of pocket to run something which is just, you know, a net negative, and the COD League says is important to them to make it work, but they can't find the money to happen. I mean, it's a shambles. As Exceed says, give the key to Challengers to absolutely anyone with a quarter of a brain cell. They'd fix the problem. Sickening watching this stuff get run into the grounds. Great job to whoever's in charge of it. Look, we know the commissioner of the league. As I say, whether the actual people, you know, the powers that be at the CDL really have any power is still something that, unfortunately, I don't think is so clear. But very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. I know there was some talk about this as well, because thankfully in the COD scene, there are still so many great people out there trying to run events, trying to do great things. And local LANs, they still exist, you know. People still run local LANs for Call of Duty. Obviously, it was a massive thing back in the day. And it seems like Premier Circuits have been running some big ones local as well. So there's a possibility that they can make it work. But fundamentally, if the money isn't going going to be there from the league, then it's probably not going to be happening. But very much enjoyed your thoughts and all this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.